Hey everybody, welcome to the next edition of the Mobilecast. We have a special one here today with the Apple announcement. So just like last week with the Microsoft Nokia one we did, we have a panel here, and I am very grateful and humbled to have Ray Wang from Constellation Research and Chris Hazelton from 451 Research. I'm going to let both of them introduce themselves, and then we're just going to have a fun discussion about what we saw or heard today. So, Ray, go first.
All right, hey, it's Ray Wang, and with Constellation Research, I am the Principal Analyst and Chairman, and we focus on disruptive technologies and how they apply back to business.
And Chris?
Chris Hazelton, so Research Director for Mobile and Wireless at 451 Research, and we focus on innovative IT impacting the enterprise. So pretty similar coverage, Jerry.
So this should be a lot of fun. We're actually all together down here at the AirWatch Connect conference, but okay, so Tim Cook came out today, and we kind of saw what we sort of expected, the iPhone 5C, the iPhone 5S. But let's start with what I thought was the big surprise. iWork is free. So you get a new device, you get Pages, you get Numbers, you get Keynote, and you also get iPhoto and iMovie. So in total, that is what they were charging, $40 per app. And who wants to go first?
Well, I think when you have upwards of 200 billion in cash, I think you can afford to give away a little software, and by little I don't mean just mobile. But I think it's also designed to push Microsoft back with their Office for iPhone offering, which only scales for iPhone apps. So I think it's kind of a defensive, but an aggressive defensive maneuver to make sure that still is the native and primary and default word processing, spreadsheets, and I guess if you want to do PowerPoint on your iPhone, go with that too.
No, I think this is all about the stack. And if you think about Google has Google Enterprise, it's got the stack. Microsoft's got the stack. And back to your point, I think native apps are important here, especially when you look at the install base on OS. I mean, this is the land grab. And if they don't have a defensible position, they better put one there. And so back to your point, a couple $1 billion, not a big deal.
Yeah, and I think you're also, you look at it, and I talked about it on other podcasts before and in my writing that, Microsoft should have put out for the iPad. Office should be out for the iPad. It shouldn't be tied to Office 365. They have this huge turf to protect. And I can open up an Office document in Pages and in Numbers. I lose some fidelity. But if I'm a kid and I have an iPad and I go to class, this becomes real interesting. I think it also becomes interesting what happens with, do they do the same thing when they come out with Mavericks? Then now you get iWorks for free, and you have iWorks in the iCloud. Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, if I'm a school system, do I pay for Microsoft, or do if I already have Apple devices or I'm using iCloud, do I just let people deal with it that way? I mean, it's big as far as the land grab.
Well, it's offensive towards Microsoft to make sure that they're going after that piece, but it's also defensive because of Google and what Google's been doing with their apps.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, do you want your future customers growing up on iWorks, or do you want them, obviously Microsoft would want them growing up on Office 365, but when you have that stack, as Ray was talking about, you can own the customer, and I think it talks, a lot of what iOS 7 does is taking kind of more and more ownership. Obviously, kind of what I focus on is enterprise mobility, and we'll probably get into that later, but iOS 7 is doing more on terms of ownership, and that kind of speaks volumes to what Apple's doing along that whole entire stack, which is, trying to own, the customer experience, both for consumer, traditional market for Apple, but also education, which is also traditional, but then enterprise, increasingly enterprise. So.
Okay, so we don't usually do this, but prediction. How quickly does Microsoft release Office for the iPad?
Oh, they just did. Did you just see that? It just came across the wire. I think I would say by the end of the year, they really need to do that. And I think what will drive that is the acquisition of Nokia. And actually, no, check that. That would make it more difficult. But I think the idea that you have mobile becoming more of a primary for Microsoft, and you saw with the launch of iOS Office for iOS, kind of a loss of control of the OS division in terms of the other operating divisions of Microsoft, and so I think that putting more focus on mobile, even though it is a Windows Phone strategy, could drive further distribution of a mobile Office for iOS and for Android.
Right.
I would say so long it would happen before they choose the new CEO. I'll hedge my bets.
I've always said that they've had it for a while. I mean, I'm pretty sure that they've had iOS for, or I should say, Office for iOS for many, many moons. And so I don't think it would take them long to release it, but I think it'll be another internal battle. What I think, the other piece, and we'll get to the new devices in a second, is with iWorks works on Firefox and works on IE. Do you ever think that Apple might release iWorks for, I don't know, PC? For Windows Phone or Android?
I would not see.
Or just go with the web client.
I'd say definitely a web client. I mean, if you look at what Chrome, it's funny that I struggle with Chrome because you have Chrome OS and you have Chrome browser, and even just having a discussion with someone can be confusing. But I think the idea is that down the road, Google wants Chrome to be, just the platform, regardless of whether it's the entire OS or it's Chrome on your MacBook or Chrome even on your iOS device. So I think that it will be Google. I mean, that just really is kind of their strategy, is basically to be able to play on any device, whether it's a Chrome OS device or Android or Chrome browser.
I think this comes back to business model. For Google, it's about reach, and they're still in an ad-based business model, and so they don't care. They give it all away for free so they can connect back. Apple doesn't have that model yet, but when things like iAds come out, when other pieces that are going to be a lot more connected, or they're going to hit the crossover between business and consumer, then we might be able to see something like that occur.
Okay, so we've talked to iWorks. I thought that was an interesting way to open up. I mean, they talked a little bit about the store and some other stuff, but 5C. I watched a couple comments on Twitter and everything else, and for almost the whole thing, they said, okay, so Apple's not very good at leaks anymore, and they've kind of confirmed all the leaks. But the 5C. First of all, the other comment I saw on Twitter is they're using real color names, so it's blue, yellow, green, red. Blue, yellow, green, red. I don't remember. There's one other color in there. White, maybe. I'm not sure. But, regular color names. It's polycarbonate. So a lot like Nokia. Let's not look down. It's not cheap plastic, and we've seen cheap plastic phones from many makers where you've held them and they feel cheap, everything else. My first real experience with that was the Nokia 820 and then the 920. So, I can guess that it's a nice feeling phone, but some people say it's plastic. But it's an iPhone 5 for cheaper, essentially, from what they said.
It's iPhone 5 China, iPhone 5 cheap, iPhone 5. I don't know, Cupertino.
So there's the colors right there. So I think it was white.
Yeah, so there was white, and they have cases. So they made a big deal about these cases that have holes in them, so you could show the color of your phone.
Connect 4 cases.
Well, I think this is Apple's first attempt at actually being able to do product diversification, right? It's still the same case. It's still the same components. Let's just figure out how to assemble it. Less of a cost with some less features. They're starting to realize that they need to win the price point war. Even though they have the margin war, they've got the developer ecosystems. You got to come back and figure out, right, how do we go address the rest of the world that doesn't have an iPhone but could aspire to one before the gap between Samsung closes.
Yeah, so, and Chris, I'll throw it to you in a second. I mean, the one thing, and we're doing this pretty quickly after the announcement. People are still looking at the phones, and we're not actually there. But we don't know what the unsubsidized price is, which makes a difference. Mm-hmm. So,
yep. Yeah, I think the one thing that stood out for me was that they claimed that it had more LTE bands than any other device in the world, and we heard that just last week in Berlin with the Samsung Galaxy Note 3. So I think that's really going to be a kind of a battleground for a lot of these devices, and the spectrum challenge around the world for LTE is just a mess. Governments having to clear spectrums, different spectrum bands across, Europe. So you're driving just a couple hours and you're changing. Your LTE spectrum is changing, so your device may have to change or may not, depending on how many radios are in it. But I can't even imagine how many radios that means if they would. So 20 radios in that?
I mean, back in the day just BlackBerry, thinking about 7 radios was a lot. Now we're at, what, 20, 30?
Yeah, so it was like, I think
30 radios.
One of the last Bolds had like 12 radios. Yeah, that was a Verizon World phone. So.
And it's interesting. I mean, if you look at it, essentially what they did is they took the 5S. There's still a metal case in there, which is the antenna, but they put polycarbonate around it, so you don't have the attenuation that you had from actually touching the antenna. They claim that it's somewhat better battery. It's a bigger battery, so you get better battery life than the 5. One would think that the polycarbonate probably doesn't crack or break as much. So, I heard some people say, it's the 5 kids, even though it's spelled with a C, not a K.
C is for child.
There you go. C is for child. And there are a lot of kids getting phones. This is a nice way to give a kid, a $99 or $199 2-year contract phone. So, and then we have the 5S. Now the 5S is a lot different, and yet it looks exactly the same. 3 colors. So gold. They call it gold or champagne. I don't know. But gold, silver, and did we ever decide whether it was black or graphite?
It looked like graphite. It didn't seem really black.
It's gray.
A grayish black type thing, which looked interesting, but, just to summarize, newer, better camera, fingerprint sensor, and battery life is better, more LTE bands. First impressions?
We're in incremental improvements here on the iPhone 5. I think when I first got my 5, I was just like, it's lighter, it's easier. But I think it grows on you, right? These are sophisticated refinements over time, not features and bells and whistles that kind of get you. They're not gimmicks, right? They're for people who've actually been using the phones for quite some time. These features actually make a lot of sense. So.
Yeah, I think the things that stand out to me are the fingerprint sensor. As an enterprise guy, I think that it's obviously very unique. The question I have is, you have tens of millions of laptops out there that are using fingerprint sensors, and I don't think really too many people use them. But this could be Apple reinventing the technology that's already out there on laptops. Given it is laptops, this is not a smartphone. But so Apple will there'll be a lot of energy around that, but could it be the next Siri where people don't use it? It depends on how seamless that experience of, I touch the phone and is it, laser quick response? What happens 6 months or a year down the road when I have a new operating system? Does that become a little bit slower? Then you might go back to the pin access. The other thing is the 64-bit chip, A7 chip.
Yeah, we'll talk. We're going to talk about that.
We're talking about now. Okay.
No, but what I'm really excited about on the fingerprints is the fact that it enables commerce. Right, we're going to see different ways of commerce tied back to identity, tied back to how people are accessing. Either I could use this to access a back room, or I could access to records, or I can access this to make a payment, or I can swap payments with folks. So it does open up a lot of possibilities on the mobile commerce front.
Yeah. This immediately vaults the iPhone beyond really what anything that BlackBerry provided. In terms of, unless you had the common access card, really this is the most secure enterprise device out there using a fingerprint sensor. Once it's open, once it's unlocked, that's a different story. But as an access device, it's pretty secure.
And what's interesting is, we're not going to see the commerce stuff right away.
No.
And I think Apple actually did that for a lot of reasons. I think that, certainly with the NSA, PRISM, and everything else, they were pretty proud to say, we're not going to store the fingerprints. They stay on what they're calling safe enclave, so, some sort of security chip where you can't get to it, although you can do multiple fingers. So the question is, someone asked me before, can it be my wife's finger or whatever else, which could be interesting, but, from an enterprise perspective, seeing what you did, I see it really useful of people don't have to remember their 8-digit or 9-digit PIN. Yep. If you want to, you should remember it. But hey, if I can use the fingerprint reader every time, and you steal my phone, and your fingerprint doesn't work, you need to know my PIN. Well, if I don't remember my PIN, how can I tell it to you? But the one place where they did go to commerce, which is another nice thing to do with it, is the fact that it works with iTunes. So when you buy an app, what do people hate the most? Having to put your password in when you buy an app, and you can use your fingerprint to do that, which I think is, that baby step.
So how long will it take until developers are able to get access to that? I think we talked about this too.
Well, they said developers get no access.
I think that might fall eventually.
I'm just thinking about like how good the Gorilla Glass is to keep me from smudging, because I would just lift the fingerprints off these puppies and do some reverse engineering.
Well, that becomes a question. I think we'll see that. I think you're going to see, a couple of enterprising people, security people, do their best to defeat it.
Yep.
From what I understand, it does subdermal scanning and some other stuff, so it should be able to defeat some of that. But, it's not perfect, and yet they're providing a service.
Yeah.
I lose my phone. It's not like you're going to figure it, you steal my phone. Unless you've paid somebody and there's like an easy way to do it, you're not going to be able to unlock it. And with the iOS 7 features, being able to keep somebody from registering it, that's pretty neat.
It'd be a little gory. You really have to put that finger on the reader quite quickly after you cut it off that person's hand to make sure that it works.
I had a feeling you'd go there, Chris. Just guessing. So, the other two big things. So let's hit the A7 first. So they announced the A7, and the big thing on that is it's 64-bit, and it's a heck of a lot faster. Now there's another chip they announced. We'll get to that one in a second. But thoughts on A7 and 64-bit? First phone 64-bit.
I think it's interesting because it basically, historically, smartphones and the vendors that make them never tell you what chip is really in that device. I mean, Apple is saying that they branded it their own A7, but they don't tell you, what the gigahertz speed is. They just say it's 64-bit and it's twice as fast as the previous phone, if I have that correct. So I think it's very interesting. It definitely pushes the device forward, but a little bit behind it is kind of marketing speak to kind of hide the components so that it's more difficult to compare apples to apples between devices.
Figuratively, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the thing I'm thinking about with the A7 is back to something we were talking about around lunch. It's like, well, how does Samsung respond to that, and how quickly can Apple take advantage of that with the developer ecosystem to say, look, you're on 64-bit versus whatever's on Android. That's going to be interesting.
And what they talked about was, they did the Infinity Blade Trinity demo on stage, and that developer said it took them all 2 hours to convert to 64-bit. I asked a couple other developers on Twitter, and I got answers back that, well, if it's anything like the Mac, it's actually pretty easy. It's built into, they're putting Xcode tools out there and all. So you think between that, they announced that iOS 7 is completely 64-bit capable, and all of their apps are rewritten to 64-bit. You'd think that, that 2x speed or whatever you're seeing may actually be, that's raw speed. The OS may be even faster, and so it becomes real interesting from that speed.
Maybe some of the power savings is coming from that as well, driving the battery life. So I'm sure that we'll figure out a way to waste that soon. But
10 hours talk time, 10 hours LTE time. That's pretty impressive.
And then
10 hours LTE was the one that was impressive to me. I was like,
that is nice. Being that my phone doesn't last that
tower,
long.
though.
That's next to the tower?
All right. That's not in this hotel. Let's be clear here, where we have no Verizon signal.
Yes, thank you, Hyatt Regency Atlanta. Please fix your Wi-Fi.
Well, we're not even talking Wi-Fi. We're talking Verizon first. But then they announced another chip, which was Apple did something kind of interesting here, and nobody was expecting this. They put in a motion coprocessor, and pretty much what the motion coprocessor does is, at all times, continuously, it's checking the accelerometer, the compass, and the gyroscope. So, I know one person has compared it to what's in the Moto X. But, the other piece there is, well, now you have a device that can actually be used for fitness. It's doing it all the time. Somebody said, Fitbit, and they had a quote, "Oh, crap." And do you necessarily need a Fitbit? Do you need these bands if you have it? They showed it with a new Nike app. I asked whether Nike had actually bought an app called Moves, which is a similar app on that you can use on the iPhone 5, but kind of gives them some new health things that you couldn't do before.
Yeah, I mean, we're at the beginning of all these self-quantification, all the devices that are happening, what people are doing around gamification and social. Actually at our conference, we actually have Jay McGonigal from Super Better Labs talking about where this future is going with this. And I think this is going to unleash a whole new set of developer ecosystems on the M-Health market. There's some things that, of course, I'm not briefed by Apple on these, but I can say there's a big division going on in terms of building all their iHealth, all their healthcare apps that are going on that require these sensors. It's not just the accelerometers. It's going to be a whole bunch of different sensing devices that actually occur that's actually leveraging this chip in a very different way. Designed for one of the things that we're talking about are human APIs in the future, ability to connect between man and machine and man and device, kind of towards the singularity kind of concept.
Yeah, I think you mentioned the Moto X. There you have a specific chip that's designed for a specific set of applications and software, and I think that is very cool. This is kind of the anti-Moto X because this is driving people to exercise, whereas the Moto X is driving people to be lazy.
Well, you also look at it, they could do some of the things, this is a contextual computing chip. So, we've all kind of had some interesting conversations on contextual computing, but, you can do the things that the Moto X does now because it's built in. You could, it's not hooked to the speaker, but I don't see why you couldn't have Siri always listening. I don't see why when you pick it up it can't turn the screen on now. Things like that, if it's within a certain amount of time. There's a bunch of stuff that it really enables now.
The Gear watch, maybe it'll automatically turn on. Wait, never mind, that's wrong.
That would be Samsung. But okay, so that's the motion coprocessor. Let's talk about the camera. The camera, camera was the other big thing. So raw, if I remember correctly, 120 frames per second. So you can you shoot first, do slow-mo later. Best thing I saw was there are going to be a lot more slow motion clips, slow motion failure clips uploaded to YouTube, which I thought was kind of funny. Bigger pixels, not as big as the ones on the HTC One, but it's still an 8 megapixel camera, and the HTC One is a 4 megapixel camera, if I remember correctly. But bigger pixels than what they had. Bigger lens, 2.2, 5-element lens, and the dual flash. So the flash is actually two colors, and it examines the room, and you can actually adjust up to 1,000 variations. So, your take?
Yeah, a shout out to my colleague Carl Howe at Yankee Group. He tweeted that he predicts YouTube uploads of fail moments will now increase, but they'll also look a lot better.
And what else? What else draws you about the camera? I mean,
I do like the ability for the iPhone to decide what photo is best for you. I think there are a lot of people out there that don't take good photos.
So that's the other piece. I left that out. It takes, when you snap a picture, it actually takes somewhere between 5 and 7 pictures or whatever. Actually, no, I think it's 14. It takes a certain number of pictures, and then it picks the best one. It does auto white balance, does all this other stuff. And I don't know whether you can manually go in and do it, but with iPhoto for free on the phone, it becomes interesting. Plus, it also do 10 frames per second and does motion compensation, so auto motion. But Ray?
I think the 120 FPS actually changes the future of video, right? When we're thinking about what happens today, the video piece is the underutilized piece because that's the one where the compression's been an issue, frames per second hasn't been there, the processor speeds haven't been fast enough. So I think this is going to unleash a new wave of how people use video, both for live, both for streamed, and both for time lapsed.
So I fully agree. I mean, and it doesn't replace. Let's be fair here. The Nokia 1020 has a gorgeous camera. Enables you to zoom after you take the picture, and there's something to be said about that. But I think that really, if you're looking at cameras right now, those are the two. Those are really the two big cameras that you have, and that you can actually do something with. But then again, this has some things that doesn't have, so it'll kind of be interesting.
What happened to the Lytro? No, I'm just kidding. This is replacing the Lytro, I guess.
Yeah, you mentioned Nokia. There was a Nokia UK tweeted that imitation is the best form of flattery. when they
is that the 620 that they're showing
this
there?
is I don't know which one it is, but it basically is the color backed. I don't know if it's polycarbonate as well.
It's polycarbonate.
Yeah. So it's almost the same colors, except there's no white here, but I'm sure there's a white. So it's there are people kind of ganging up on Apple and saying that they're not innovating, but
here's
you can do.
Here's a question. And I've posited this before to a couple other people, but to both of you, I've had a lot of people comment recently. Innovation's dead in the phone. It's all in the software. More from the perspective of the Moto X did some stuff, but in reality, everything's a slab. The screen might be bigger, but screen bigger, screen smaller isn't really innovation at the moment. We've seen it now. Apple hasn't done it, but that's fine. But is it innovative for Apple to have a bigger screen? Well, it may be for them, but is that real innovation? So, do you see some of this stuff as innovative compared to the rest, or no?
I think the fingerprint reader is new. 64-bit is new, but it's I think where the market is heading. We talked about the specific custom components that align with a specific segment of the app, of kind of exercise apps, for lack of a better word. So that's still software driven. So I think it is absolutely software that's driving innovation within the smartphone space. But I think there still is a little bit of room left, and we have things around battery. Batteries have been a major stumbling block for smartphones lasting. We've gone backwards in terms of battery life. So I think there are a couple major challenges on the hardware side that we need to overcome, and then we'll start to see more innovation on the hardware side. But for the next year or two, a lot of it's going to be software driven.
I'm just excited. If you're an HFR shooting guy, this is perfect, right? I mean, this is 120. You've been waiting for this. It's not like you're going to carry anything else with you, but more and more, it's back to the point where the iPhone's destroying all these different business models. It's happening at the software level. Yeah, this is a slab, fine, but you know what? I'm doing a lot with the slab that I couldn't do before, and frankly, if I'm Apple, I'm really just building out the Star Trek product footprint.
So do you stay with Apple? I mean, you have two Apple devices with you. Do you stay with Apple, or are you going to look at Samsung or Motorola or Nokia?
I've actually played with all those devices, and
let's be fair here. Everybody here, at this table, we all have.
We've all played with these devices, and for me, it's the consistency of user experience that has me back on Apple. Right? I mean, for me, before it was I tried all the different flavors of Droid. I love the Nokia build quality. I like the gimmicks on the Samsung, but when I really need to get work done, I'm still back on an iPhone.
Yeah, I think there are a couple things. I mean, I like Android in that you can really customize everything where you want things, and with Apple though, a lot of their services they work. To be a successful Android user, you need to be almost your own system integrator. But as an iPhone, everything kind of works out of the box or is downloaded. I'm not promising everything's going to work out of the box, but it just does work a little bit easier. I'm considering giving an Android phone to my dad, but I think I might actually push him toward an iPhone because I want fewer support calls.
Yes, exactly. That's actually one of the things. Like when we took our father off the PCs and gave him a Mac, he just stopped. All the support calls ended. It was like the best thing in life.
I said it before. My mother's rocking her iPhone 4S, and other than every now and then she asks my daughter, because I won't let her ask me. I say I have two daughters. They both know how to do it. You handle it. But, here's another great example. You have a Moto X. I actually like the Moto X quite a bit. But you have the Moto X, and it's a nice phone. And how long have you had the Moto X?
About a month.
Okay, you've had it for a month. And we're sitting there playing with it yesterday, and there was stuff you couldn't find. And this is the only phone you're carrying. There's stuff you couldn't find, and a couple things I had to help you with to figure out how to do. Yeah, no, nothing big. But, seriously, that's one of those things. And, it's not necessarily, it's not that it's bad. I like the Moto X. I have one on the way. I'm probably going to rock that for...
What color is it? Did you customize it?
I'm waiting for the code to customize it. So, but, I expect it to be customized.
Yeah.
But it becomes interesting. What do you do with that? And
go ahead.
I was going to say, like, the big thing here really is all these improvements that are happening are really designed around this fact that there's a stack. There are only 4 companies in the world that can go from cloud to your device. And when we're talking about this, right, it's Apple, it's Amazon, it's Microsoft, and it's Google. Right, so the battle around here is these 4 stacks that are going on. It's, you're either the content player, you're either the network, right, or you're the arms dealer, right? And at this point, you got to figure out where you are, but you're not going to be the network because these 4 vendors have it locked down. So I've got complete control of that network. So it's about distribution, making it easy for developers, making it easy for consumers to pick it up.
Yeah, I'm going to use the dreaded ecosystem word because what you call network, I call ecosystem.
These are ecosystems.
It's. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, there's no reason to change. Look at, seeing what I saw. The big thing here is it's available in China on the first day. We don't know which carrier, but it's available in China the first day. It's available, for those of you listening, you'll be able to get the OS on September 18th. You can pre-order the devices this coming Friday, which is Friday the 13th. Interesting omen. And you can go wait online, which I'm sure some people will, although none of us will. Next Friday, and get your device, whichever one that you want. But it's something they do well. It's interesting. After the Samsung conference last week, one of the things that a lot of people complained to me about was I can't get in the U.S. till October. I can't. We're at least a month away. Whereas, I can order in the U.K. today, or I can. And that was frustration. You see this. Motorola did the same thing. You see some of that stuff happen.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I was in Times Square for the Galaxy Note, and I was playing with these things. I was like, so why can't I get one of these? Like, oh, no, you got to wait. And I'm like, great. So,
Chris?
I'm just worried about the people that are already lined up at the, the Fifth Avenue Apple store. They're going to have to wait a week and a half. So how valuable is that seat going to be?
Are you really worried just because you paid someone to stand in line for you?
I did. I didn't pay much.
And you're afraid he might, switch allegiances or something?
Yeah, I might have to up that actually, since it's a longer wait.
Okay, so we'll have to see on that
Let's
one.
Revisit that one.
The other big thing that last thing, and then we'll wrap up. But one of the nice things about the A7 chip is we actually expect that Apple will have another news conference sometime in the next month or so and announce new iPads. And so we may get a Retina iPad Mini. We'll probably see an iPad 5. We know that that's going to be thinner because they've gone with the thinner bezels.
Blue, red, yellow, green, white.
I don't know that we'll get colors on there, but I think
iPad C.
I think the A7. We may not see the motion coprocessor, but I think the A7. You can actually really drive it on there because you look at some of the universal apps and some of the business apps and everything else. Was it you or we were sitting with Andrew Borg from Aberdeen Research, and he goes, I wonder if I can run big data on this, because it's 64-bit. It's an interesting thing. But last takes, let's go around because I promised not to keep you guys. Okay. So it's Rob Tiffany. Okay, Andrew read it because Andrew was reading my tweet stream while we were watching the live blog. But last take, what do you guys think?
I'm wondering what will the iPad be called?
The iPad.
The iPad.
The new iPad.
I'm holding. I will probably not likely buy the 5S, but I definitely will be buying the iPad Mini Retina display. I think I've probably hurt myself many times dropping my iPad on my head as I'm reading it in bed. So
that might be too much information.
Reading. I said reading.
Well, you are married, so
I am. Oh. But I think, that will be a 64-bit processor on an iPad with a keyboard. So what does that make it? Is it a tablet?
I don't know. At 120 frames per second, that would be nowhere near my bed.
I don't know that you're going to have the same camera in there, but that's good to know. I'm not sure where to go with that, right?
No. Actually, yeah. No. For me, actually, I think on the iPad piece, there's a lot more interesting devices that are actually going to pop up with that. And I think the accessories that are going to be around the iPad Mini, given the size, given the form feature, that is basically the Star Trek tablet. right? I mean that is basically what it is, and that the size, the weight, right? That means there's a whole bunch of other like interesting accessories, like that might show up. So these wearables are actually going to tie back more likely to the iPad Mini than anything else because of it was really basically because of the display constraints. So,
and we didn't even talk about iOS 7 and all that, other than the fact that it's 64-bit optimized. But I think it's good that you brought that up, because I think one of the things we may see, certainly with the iPhone, is a new set of accessories that, because they don't need the motion control, they don't need the accelerometer or whatever, because it's built into the phone and you have the motion coprocessor. We may see a whole new set of peripherals that we hadn't thought of that, kind of make life a little bit interesting.
Yeah, health apps, sport apps, gaming apps. Like, you could actually have, back when the Wii was hot, you could have similar kind of Wii-like controls going around, multiplayer games that way, right, where you're all standing around, moving around, but you don't have anything. You just have a wearable on you, but it's actually being monitored, connected back to Apple TV.
So let's take that, because you and I talked about this last night when you came in. What's this all mean for the Apple TV? And I mean...
No, I think you had the better answer. You should answer that one.
Okay, so... Well, I'm the host, so you have to ask me that question. But
all right, what did you think from last night? Where is the Apple TV going, and what about the chip?
I think that the A7 chip, if that gets put inside an Apple TV, I think the game's over. For you look at it, and I see, from what we saw at WWDC, and now that stuff's public, I think the iPhone becomes a game controller. And I think that you'll start seeing like this Infinity Blade. Imagine putting that on the Apple TV, add a little more RAM to it, keep the price at $99, add a little more RAM to it, put the A7 in there. You now have a full console experience. And what if you can play with your iPhone? Or a controller, because they show controllers that plug directly in, or that use Bluetooth with the Apple TV. But they also showed a controller that Logitech was building that could go around the iPhone itself, so you could have your own PSP. But just think that if you could have multiplayer and some of the things that were built into the Chromecast and everything else, pretty damn cool.
Wow. I mean, just think about that. Just sports games right there, right? Playing, head-to-head across the world. That's awesome.
I know, Chris, you have to leave. So, Ray, I know you're trying to catch a plane out of here. Any last words before we hang up here?
I would just say that if in the event that you ever hold a conference and you're a mobile vendor, make sure your mobility works.
Absolutely. I second that. That's a good ending.
Okay, everybody. Thanks very much. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. And that's it for this special edition of the Mobilecast. We'll try and get this out later tonight. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Chris. And, guys, if you have any comments, contact us on Twitter, reach out to the webpage. Enjoy listening to this episode, and actually we'll have another one later this week.